Welcome home. We are WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are positively into summertime, and I get to bring all my great baseball mafia guests on here, all my insiders, all my business people. But before I do that, I want to promote State Fair and let everyone know we are going to be bringing the Gold Rush Sevens Doublers on the 13th of August. I know it sounds like a long time from now, but we're going to rev up the engines again for the Maryland Crab Cake Tour in our 26th year. I'm going to have to change my cupcake. All the brought to you by our friends at Liberty Pure Solutions, as well as Jiffy Lube Multi-Care, keeping Luke out in Owings Mills and down to the ballpark, and Padres in, and Marlins out, and All-Star game over with. Been a couple of months. I like to check in sort of like Jiffy Lube every couple of months. Every 5,000 miles, I check in with Marty Conway, who is our defending champion, the professor of all things good sports business at Georgetown University. The kids don't show up for class these days, but I'm always here learning from the good professor. That's why we call these wise conversations. Marty, it's been a little bit, man. How are you? How's your summer? I hope you're Springsteening and seeing concerts and trying to enjoy this little run of baseball fun around here.
Yeah, oh no, absolutely. This is the time. Just like you mentioned, a few weeks away from school restarting at Georgetown. But it's a good time, right? Football, the business of football is front and center again after, whatever the off-season issues were. And then in terms of baseball, this is an exciting time. Trade deadline coming up soon. That's when some things get revealed as to how much payroll they can actually afford, teams come, and who's selling and who's buying. So it's starting to get really interesting.
Yeah, and I don't know where we are, Mr. Rubenstein. I'm never going to meet him. That's been made pretty clear to me. And if I did, I wouldn't get like an authentic, kind of conversation that I would be looking for as a human being. And I've learned that much. So I expect nothing more or less than him from Angelos. Now I just judge him like he's the new owner, and what are they going to do? And like everyone else, sign Gunner, sign Adley. I'm not there, but I am looking at this week. And one of the reasons I've reached to you and all of my smartest baseball business people to come in and sort of educate me a little bit. You sat in this seat, revenue, where you are,
Hmm.
we've talked so much about
Hmm.
where this thing is $65 all you can come this month and next month, and just trying to get asses in the seats and activate people that are unactivated. But then there's the money
Hmm.
and the minor league system, and how desperate we are to win right now and what we need. Because last time you and I got together, John Means was coming back, and Kyle Bradish was coming off a Cy Young candidacy, and Tyler Wells was going to be in the boy. Things
Right.
have changed
Yep.
dramatically. Oh, and
Hmm.
Kowser was going to the Hall of Fame. I mean, all of these things that changed from April to July. And we put the dipstick in and measure like they do at Jiffy Lube and say, how's the oil look? Where are you this week? What is your level of expectation of new ownership, GM that's clearly a genius, this system that's as loaded as anything you've ever seen, and you spent 20 years in baseball. Like, this is
Hmm.
crazy that they have all
Hmm.
these great players, and then what are they going to do with it? This is fun. This is great baseball fun.
Yeah, one of the things that's apparent is their player development system is on par above everybody. Um, on par with the best around. Because they take players in who are, what Roland Heeman used to do, sort of a cast off, and get a guy that showed some brilliance, falling on hard times, clean him up, dust him off, improve his delivery, mechanics, hitting, whatever it is. And suddenly for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, half a season, he looks like an all-star candidate. So they've done a great job of that. Their players, when they come to the major leagues, Jordan Westberg and others, Gunnar Henderson, they're clearly ready to contribute. They're good, solid hitters. They're good all around on defense. They do a great job, particularly in the position player area, where they still have questions is on the pitching side, right? And I think that's going to be their biggest challenge, is because pitching is expensive in the trade market, and there's only so many DFAs, free agents that are designated for assignment, um, that you can count on. So last year at this time, they picked up Flaherty and they picked up a reliever from the A's who didn't turn out to be really anything. This time around, perhaps they're willing to part with a higher up prospect, a top 10 prospect in their system, for an experienced starter or some bullpen assistance. They are definitely going to need help in the pitching area, um, in particular the bullpen. I know people talk a lot about starters. We need a frontline starter. Those are really difficult to get in the trade market. But what you can do is you can really fortify your bullpen, which can support your whatever starting rotation that you have. So, long story short, is all eyes are on Mike Elias and his team into what they can acquire in terms of arms. Clearly, the pitching is there. I mean, the infield, outfield depth is there, but pitching is the question that they'll need to solve between now and the end of July.
Marty Conway is our guest. He's the good professor of all things sports business at Georgetown University, long background in Major League Baseball, and has been out of the game, but certainly is close to the game. And certainly with the Nationals, you and I were talking for years about their success and talk about Strasburg now and where Soto is and what happened to their system and their players and their television money. They're still wondering about that as well. So are you and I.
Yeah.
For you with this week and financially, and I will say Katie Griggs' name to you for the first time. Don't know much about her, but she's going to come in and run this thing as the Dick Cass, Sashi Brown, or whatever of the baseball team, and bean counting, figuring out how much money they can get on revenue in every single way we always talk about at an esoteric level. Then there's like what that means on the field and what they can afford and what they cannot, whether it's a T-Row price patch, which has come since the last time I talked to you. And if that's worth 8 million, 10 million, 15 million, however much they're paying for it, it doesn't even buy Adley Rutschman's jockstrap on a long-term contract. So like it's an incredible amount of money you have to amass to pay baseball players 40 and 50 million dollars. We haven't done that here since Chris Davis. It's been a decade since this franchise has thrown that off. And this is a week here where when you give up Mayos or Basallos or, God forbid, holidays for Scoobles or whatever, that you look at this and say, from a financial standpoint in any franchise, but specifically one that's trying to figure out its finances, I would say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but what it represents to have young talent perform at this level, to have Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman working on the cheap, that gives you the opportunity to maybe buy a pitcher, maybe buy Corbin Burns. And or I don't know, but they're trying to figure out next year's rotation as much as this year's. But there is a sense from the fan base that we can win the World Series this year, so let's go do it. And I don't know what the cost of that is this week.
Yeah, and that remains to be seen. One thing that you can look at as a guide is total revenues earned by the team. Forbes does a pretty good job. I think is better than anybody,
I
which
have
is
Kurt Badenhausen coming on today.
yeah,
So there you
right.
go. Yes.
So estimating revenues, I think recently they estimated the Orioles revenues in the 325-ish million range, which might place them in the top 20, somewhere between 15 and 20 in terms of total revenue for teams. But very clearly, what you need in order to assemble a group of young players signed to long-term contracts, what the Atlanta Braves did over the last 2.5 or 3 years, and where they are today, is you need a total revenue in the 400 plus million range. And so, does that mean that the Orioles are 75 million or so away from sort of that level? If you look at the top 10 revenue producing teams in Major League Baseball, they are all at or above $400 million. The Dodgers and Yankees are in the mid $500 million in terms of revenue. That gives you that sort of payroll flexibility to be able to have one or two highly prized, $30 million players plus some other players that are on the rise. So having said that, whether
I've talked to Phillies people a lot this week, and they built that into that kind of a franchise there.
Yep, that's right. Right. So what you've seen is that attendance has returned. They may draw somewhere between 2.3 and 2.5 million maybe this year in terms of the regular season, which would be nice. That'd be an average of around 30,000 per game. That would help. But again, things have changed so much that revenue line, ticketing, game day revenues, whatever you call them, that revenue line continues to slip a little further down in the stack. It's still media money, whether that's national or local media money, sponsorship money, corporate sponsorship money, T. Rowe Price, others like that are a part of it. Those lines are trending towards top 1 and 2. So attendance is nice to have and it's necessary, but in terms of long-term viability, that's a more variable revenue, right? That can
And that's way more out of your
around.
Control. That's more about how many big businesses are around, and that's why the Yankees are the Yankees and the Dodgers are the Dodgers.
Yeah. Right? What I've always compared attendance to is the unemployment rate in this country. It's a lagging indicator of how well you're doing, right? People lose their job, they try to find another job, then they file for unemployment. So it's always a lagging indicator of what's going on. Attendance is that same way. You played well last year, you played well at the beginning of this year, your attendance builds now and through the end of the season. But what is more sustainable are those long-term contracts, sponsorship and media contracts, naming rights contracts, other things of the sort that you can count on because now you can project your payroll against those numbers and ownership can then say, okay, we might need to supplement here with other revenues. Again, back to the Braves example, the Braves are collecting, you know, hefty amounts of money from ticket lines and sponsorship and media, but they've also got that development area around the ballpark, which provides revenue to the ownership group, which is not subject to share with their visiting teams, that they can then turn around and use to write some additional checks for long-term players. So it's going to be essential here that the ballpark footprint becomes more proactive and progressive to allow more revenues to come in to the ownership group so that whether that's led by Katie Griggs, David Rubenstein, whoever's going to do that, that's going to happen. And then that has to happen in the next 2 to 4 years. Plus, they'll need to get in line and secure an all-star bid sometime within the next year for a 2027, 28, 29 all-star game. It's wrapped up for the next 2 years, I believe. Philadelphia has it in 26. So there's a spot open in 27, which I think is interesting because that'll be 10 years since it was in Washington. And the last time that the All-Star game was sort of in a similar market was New York, where the Mets hosted it, the Yankees hosted it. It was a 10-year differential. So I would look at 27, 28, and maybe a little bit later. If they can secure that, then they can sell against it, right? Buy your tickets now, get yourself in line, secure your seats, and you'll be present for the All-Star game.
Stadium renovations are first, though, on all that, right?
Yeah, stadium renovations have to happen. I think sometime the agreement has to come so they can get approved through the stadium authority because remember, they're on a shorter term lease until such time that they can secure those development rights and get a plan approved. And at the same time, that converts to a long-term lease. So yes, in the next 18 months, you'll need to see something tangible on the ballpark development footprint wide. And then you'll know that things are starting to take shape for a longer term vision for this ownership group and this management team.
What does Katie Griggs inherit? If you take that job, what do you see as the job for her?
So number one, you have to be the leading evangelist for baseball in the community, period. That means when you walk out the door, people see you and they think baseball, right? Because that is just so important. Yes, it's a business job, but at the end of the day, you are the person that evangelizes baseball, which means get involved, support baseball, access to baseball, all those different things, because that when that pathway opens up, then you can feed into Orioles baseball or whatever your particular brand is. So you have to be evangelist for that. You have to be an evangelist for this ownership's vision, whatever it is for the ballpark and the surrounding footprint. That has to be a part of it too. And you're going to have to solve for those big ticket revenue ideas. What's going to happen on the media front? How is the MASN agreement finally going to unwind? What do those payments look like? What happens in Washington to MASN? That will be important to the Nationals, but it's up to the Orioles franchise who've inherited the ownership of it to decide what happens throughout. So a lot of big picture details
Is it
that have
worth
to be done.
anything? Is that the MASN worth anything?
Oh, for sure. Look, we know that while pay television, cable television, if you will, continues to dwindle, it's the melting iceberg. There's still a lot of interest in media, but I could see a time where if you're out selling and representing the Orioles or the Nationals for that matter, you're not only representing, hey, buy a ticket, do this, you're also representing, hey, buy a subscription to our app so that you can watch and follow the games. Just like everybody else, whether it's Netflix, Apple Plus, Hulu.
What is that app going to cost? What's the
So,
right price on that?
so right now, there's a lot of bundling going on, but you can see anywhere between 19 to 39 and $49 a month in terms of cost. Now, you're probably going to buy it more on a season, just like you do. And so maybe, maybe that's
How much is that? Is that 199 a year, or is that
it could
499 a
be,
year?
it
What is
could
that?
be, it could be. And then during the season, just like any other retail product, you're going to say, hey, for the next 30 days, you can buy the rest of the season for this price.
So a
So
lot of people are just gonna say, I'm not buying April, I'll just buy August if they're any good. Boy,
if you,
that's gonna be a crazy model for places where baseball doesn't already matter, right?
yeah,
Like
so
we're playing these games in Miami this week,
yeah,
and I keep thinking, what's their media revenue model if they had to put all the Marlins together into one very small room
yeah,
and charge them too
yeah,
much?
right,
Well, what would too much be?
right.
And I think a lot of us aren't like, we're just going to pay for ish we don't use anymore, right? When you see
Yeah.
you're not using it, you sort of disconnect it.
Right, right. And there are even mobile apps now that will detect, what you're signed
Well,
up for and
case in
whether you're using
point,
it or not.
from your perspective, would be how many executives here for 15 years would hold up stacks like I have lottery tickets of dead Oriole tickets they couldn't give away. And
Yeah,
once you can't give them away, you stop buying it.
yeah,
And that was really one of the real problems for Oriole baseball is when they couldn't give the tickets away, the businesses said,
yeah.
well, it's not, I'll go buy Ravens tickets, or I'll
Mhm.
go buy CFG Bank, or, I'll take my employees somewhere or do something else. Like that has to come back. And to your point, the business experience for that model that Larry perfected, you guys perfected, how every storefront in town felt compelled to buy a 13 game package and say we support the Orioles in
Yeah,
some way as a business and as a write-off. I'll talk to Leonard Raskin about that later, but I do wonder. You said once Katie gives the vision for what is that vision? When do we
yeah,
get to hear the vision? I get
yeah,
that they don't have one yet, but I'm
yeah,
trying to figure it out. And trading deadline week seems like a really good time that if I were a columnist at the paper sitting with these people and say, what are you guys doing? What's the real plan here?
yeah. No, like I said, that will be job one once she's established and there's a management team around her to do that. Because that's what the community will want to see is what is your plan? What is your vision for how you're going to integrate Utah Street, Pratt Street, all those different things into what you're talking about. But back to your earlier point about media, it's all about bundling, and it will be about bundling. And that is, if you're buying a season ticket from the team, or you're buying a suite, or you're buying something, I suspect there's going to be a tag along of it's also going to include a subscription, 10 subscriptions, whatever it's going to be to do it. Because the media model today, yes, is very much driven by streaming. And if I'm not using it and I've gone 2 or 3 months and it's lagging, I'm probably going to cancel because I know that next season again, I could pick it up if I want to. And so you've
That's
got to find,
problematic for them.
oh, for sure. And like I said, for every team in sports hasn't been in the business of bundling their TV with their whatever packages they have. It's been sold by the network that bought the rights, et cetera. That's no longer going to exist. It's one and the same. It's the franchise and the team together with their media model going to the street and saying, we're bundling these two things together. You're buying a 13 game package, and here's your media package that goes with it for X additional. It's very different. It will be a challenge. Some teams have already adopted that and they're doing it, Toronto, other places. But yeah, you'll have to come up with a pricing model. You'll have to come up with a distribution plan. You'll have to come up with a promotional plan for it. And you will be hitting that promotion all the time, all season long, right? I think the other thing too, frankly, in Baltimore in particular, is getting some of those games back to what I call over the air television, right? You need the most exposure for your brand opening day on channel 13 or channel 11 or wherever it's going to
What you're
be.
saying is the opposite of Apple TV.
Yeah, you've got to do some of
But
both.
you mentioned exclusivity, and you're an old salesman, Marty, and you say it's exclusive, exclusive. You can only do it here. And at some point, you're just like, all right, I'm behind. I don't need to get behind the red room. I don't need to be in the black wing.
Mhm.
I'm just a fan staying at home. I mean, they forced me out, right? Like new ownership has told me that I'm never getting back in. They've made that clear. So my pathway is this television set to Ben McDonald and Kevin Brown and Jim Palmer and Dave
Mhm.
Johnson and Jeff Arnold and whoever they put in front of me, Rob Long, whoever's on is what
Mhm.
I've got. And I'm wondering, all right, well, so if this is my cost to entry, what will that look like a couple of years from now? When they're hopefully really good and I want to pay 189, 299, whatever. I'm fascinated by the membership club part. By the way, Marty Conway is here, the good professor from Georgetown University. So Marty, the WWE may be the model, right? Like it's a
Yes.
membership club. Like
Yes.
literally,
Hmm.
it's not really like Netflix or like that, but it is, but it includes it's the fan club at Pearl Jam where you get first crack at tickets.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they absolutely. The membership model has been the way for the last several years. We might have talked about this in the past, but several years ago, I think I had said the term season ticket is dead. It's over. It's you're not people don't want to hear you talking about buying a season ticket because a population that's age 35 and below, they don't want to buy anything that requires a commitment beyond next week or next month to do it. And so this membership idea, and there's going to be levels, and I'm sure there are levels within the membership that maybe you're at the bottom level and you have to pay a la carte for all these other things versus you're at the premium level and everything below that comes to you for free for that price. That's literally where sports and entertainment is going. The other thing too is they will have to look at opportunities within that stadium footprint for other activities. We all know how concerts work. That's one thing, but there's other ways to use your facility during the off season or during times when the team is on the road where you can generate, like I said, those revenues that may not be part of the team revenues, which gets shared with your visiting team and Major League Baseball, but go into the pockets of the ownership group that allow them the payroll flexibility to add to payroll when it's necessary through their own sort of equity purposes. So bottom line is it's a different model than way the team has operated over the last 50 years, which is they're going to have to be more expressive, inclusive, like you said, sort of a WWE face on it, where you're constantly in promotion phase, and these are your levers, media, sponsorship, tickets, all these different things all the time. You need to be in the market 365 days a year in terms of selling. If you noticed, Major League Baseball recently moved up the release of next year's schedule. That used to come out in like September, and now you're getting some exposure for it in July because, frankly, your selling season for next year begins with selling postseason opportunities for this year. So you have to overlap those cycles. And again, that's something that a new management team will continue to evolve into here locally, and it will be expressed. But the number one thing is when you and that management team show up to wherever it is around town, people automatically think baseball without even having to say what you're there to talk about.
Well, I've been traveling the area and concerts in Pennsylvania, Virginia. I mean, I see Oriole hat. I saw Oriole hats in West Palm Beach last week.
Mm-hmm.
it's becoming a hey,
Yep.
we're in first place. Put the hat on.
Yep.
Look, man, I was you weren't from around here. You didn't grow up here. I happen to know where you grew up in upstate New York. So you
Right.
didn't have Captain Chesapeake. So I was a crew member. I hear something. I'm sure you're. I was a member of the Kiss Army.
Yeah.
Back in the
Right.
late
Right.
'70s. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yep.
And I had a fun one. I had to write this one down for you because you came to the Orioles in 82, 3, 83,
85,
85.
84, 85.
If
Yeah.
I said Super TV to you, would that
Yeah,
mean
of
anything to
course
you?
I do. Yeah, I know all about that. Right, right. First one.
I wanted to be an OG,
Yeah,
and I'm
right.
thinking that was the whole model. Pay
That's
us
right.
$10 a month, and we'll
Hmm.
give you the games. And
Yep.
now it's pay us $40 a month or whatever it'll be, because
Hmm.
it's not like going to be like super cheap, I don't think. And then I think, all right, so let's add up everyone willing to do that and willing to pay full price. And let's add up everybody in Middle River who wants to give them $6 a game to go there for the month and, probably sneak flasks in the way we used to with Wild Bill back in the day. But I'm thinking, like, this is my big question, and this is where I will judge them. And I've just thought of this in our conversation because you were rambling a minute ago, and I'm thinking, how do I even judge their growth? They're such a good team, right? They won 101 games. We're going to, whatever they do for pitching this week or whatever, they have a chance to win the World Series, a very credible chance just with Corbin Burns and Grayson Rodriguez. They don't have Dean Kramer, just have to start game 3. They'll figure it out, right? And they got these great players. The All Star game was all about them last week, right? From Gunnar Henderson doing Scooby Doo to the battery was them. It's like we're almost like the Yankees or like a real friend or like the Blue Jays back when they came here 30 years ago. So I see the Orioles as this ascending brand. I see I'm talking about them. We're in the center of how great all of our players are in development, all those things we can say. I'm really wondering when they're going to clinch the pennant and they're playing in September and they're giving the seats away. It's $60, come all month. Buy a ticket. Come anytime you want. whether there's going to be more than 18,000 of us, and I was one of them there when they clinched last year, I had a chance to clinch. It's a school night. Kids are back to school. I'm saving my money for, I paid for the Ravens. I just went to Dallas with the Ravens last week. Marty, come on, man. You ran the place. There's only so
Mhm.
much money here. And you just told me there's 75 million short of being, I don't know,
Top 10 revenue team.
top
Yeah, top
10.
10
What's that
revenue.
make them? The Rangers then? Who's 10 and 9
Yeah,
with 10? Because
Braves.
I'm
Yeah,
going
Braves, Rangers.
yeah, I think of the
Yeah,
Braves as being, if they catch
yep.
up to the Braves, they've done something. They've really
Red
built a hell of a
Sox.
thing here.
Yep,
If they catch
that's
up
it.
to those places revenue wise, without using Washington at all,
Hmm.
without siphoning money off the teat of Masson, without getting money they don't deserve and never were privy to, they're going to
Hmm.
have to go make it on their own now. All of them are. So are the Padres, who don't have a television network, going to come in this weekend, and they were just spending money like they were drunk in a gaslight district, right? They're going to have to make it on their own. And I've often wondered, but I do wonder from a measurement standpoint, you can give me this 2.5 million, 7 million of that. They've given away tickets. They fill the upper deck. They do a lot of different things to give the optics, make the optics better, including the whole television broadcast is one optical Johnny Bravo at this point every night. The optics of them winning and clinching a pennant and doing all that in September. I want to see that major league movie where the season began with 5,000 people and in the end the stadium's packed. Because that to me would be an indicator because the tickets are going to be $500 in the playoff. That's a different crowd, but it's
Hmm.
not, to see the Red Sox and see them have a chance to clinch on September, whatever. And I don't have the schedule in front of me. Dude, it felt a little desperate last year. And John Boy doing the Papal handshake with Westmore and lying to everybody, and like all of that that led into September last year. It doesn't feel like Mr. Rubenstein squirting fans and dancing on the dugout, like all of that energy, the mojo, like I want to see that. And you alluded to it earlier. You're pretty confident that like this is building and this is where they've built all of this so they can go seize the tower and beat the Yankees and win the World Series. I want to see more than the usual suspects out there in September. I want to see new faces.
Yeah,
If I'm Katie
look,
Griggs,
yeah,
like
no, like I said, that's a part of it, which is building that advanced sale where in September, whether they're in it or out of it, whatever, those tickets, a lot of those tickets have already been bought, right? Because they're part of a season package, they're part of a half season, they're part of a whatever flexible package they are. That's what you're looking for. And I've always thought that the Baltimore market, from a baseball standpoint, can be, needs to be, and at times was similar to St. Louis. There's a Cardinals Nation concept there. And again, a little different. They can reach into some states that maybe don't have baseball and they can draw, but the Cardinal fans have a loyalty to the point where even when they're not good, they were routinely drawing in the 2.5 million range. And when they were good, or when they are good, they're drawing in the 3 million range. That's not going to happen here anymore because of Washington
well,
having a
people from
team.
Kentucky, Arkansas,
Yeah,
Mississippi, all through that
yeah,
region,
right.
all use the St. Louis Cardinals
Yeah,
as their home team.
yeah,
Iowa, the whole state of Iowa was,
yeah.
like all of that, right?
And part of it is a model of relative sustained success. There's rare times when the Cardinals weren't in it or considered to be in it. They rarely, if ever, went through like a rebuilding period where they tore it
And they
down.
let Albert Pujols walk over all that
Yeah,
money,
and
right?
they have some really good natural rivalries. For example, with the Cubs, for example, they're a part of that. So there are things that are built into it. And again, the American League East division is a very, very difficult, probably the most difficult division to have sustained success because the ability the Yankees and the Red Sox and maybe even at times the Blue Jays have to inject payroll to do that. And so they have their work cut out for them in that respect. But if you're back to asking like, what is that? How do you get to that point? Number one, they're in position now where they have young players who will be playing here on reasonable payrolls for the next several years. They have that opportunity to build that. And at the same time, if they start to develop the footprint around that makes that a busy place around Camden Yards and Oriole Park, and if they're able to acquire things like the Major League Baseball All-Star Game 3 years out, that gives people the sense, hey, this is coming, this is building. I want to be there when it happens. And it takes you from 18,000 people in September even if you've already clinched or about to clinch, to 28,000 people in September, no matter where you are, because those tickets have been bought, those sponsor packages are in place, and all those things. And you reduce the risk from season to season about the performance or the weather or other issues, the performance of the football team or other things that get in the way that pull money. Because you're right, in some respects, Baltimore has a finite amount of money available for their sports and entertainment. And whether that marginal dollar, right, we know what the Orioles will get, we know what the Ravens will get, no matter what they do, but that marginal dollar in the middle, if it more or less goes to the Orioles versus more or less going to the Ravens, that's what you're looking for. So um, those are the kind of things that you will be sitting in the warehouse top floor thinking about, how do we get to that point? What do we have to do? Again, how do we evangelize baseball in the way that the Ravens have evangelized football, to the point where you need to be there, or you need to be paying attention, or you need to be buying something, even if it's not a ticket, it's some other representation of your loyalty and relationship. When you can get to that point, then you've got something that can sustain year to year, and now you're closer to a Cardinals model or a Cubs model or someplace like that.
Marty Conway is the good professor of all things sports business at Georgetown University. We love having his wisdom and our wise conversations. You know, I want to leave baseball and go to football, but they are. This is where, what are you going to spend your money on? Playoff tickets, World Series tickets, or are you going to Dallas with the Ravens? Or are you going to,
Mm-hmm.
to San Diego? I just said that. Los Angeles, wherever it's going to be, where you're going to spend that money. I went to Van Halen last weekend. I went to see the Pretenders because I could afford it the other night. I bailed on Pat Benatar. I love you, Pat, but your tickets were too expensive, and you weren't a $250 night for me. So I learned this on the music space of when I go to a game, how much the night out is worth to me. In the same way you would judge a meal, a travel, a hotel, a plane ride, like where the value play is on
Yeah.
all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And they the baseball team has made it very affordable. I have talked and shat upon the football team at length. I went through some old screenshots I'm doing because I'm doing a whole Labor Day thing on me being discriminated against and not being a chance to work and do my job. So I'm doing that during Labor Day week. But I started to look at ticket prices and where they are. Ravens tickets a lot of nights are 10 or 15 or 20 bucks. If you wanted to go, you could go. Orioles games are inexpensive enough that you can go if you want to go, or find an angle, or Gunnar Henderson hits 5 home runs and they have a $5 flash sale. See, they're really doing, and Luke and I were talking about this, a lot of things the Angelos family never did
Yeah.
in regard to really trying to get you to the ballpark while they're
Mm-hmm.
winning at
Mm-hmm.
whatever your price point is. Whatever my friend
Mm-hmm.
Melanie in Dundalk, who's on a fixed income season ticket holder, lover, known her forever. She's an Oriole lifer and can't afford playoff tickets, can't afford certain things, but can still afford to go to the ballpark. And
Yep.
we used to always say back in your era, price of a movie ticket, night
Yeah.
out, of
Yep.
affordable night out for a family to go to the game. Baseball had gotten away from that with the Angeles people because what they were trying to get you to pay. Now the family thing of bringing kids for free and all that, that's why I'm saying, Marty, it should be full. They're great. The
Mm-hmm.
weather's good. You got nothing else to do. It is more affordable than the Raven experience to be able to do it and to get on board. There's a lot of things to love about the team. It's go time, bro. It's not any more unorthodox Angelos. It's what are you going to be?
Mm-hmm.
This is needs to be the mature product, not beta.
Yeah, no, it's look, I've always said that baseball, it can and should be and needs to be always the most affordable sports and entertainment option in your market. Why? Look, you have 81 regular season home games, 80 minus opening day. There should never be a time, whether it's on a Monday night, Friday night, Saturday night, whatever it is, where you shouldn't be locked out of going to a game because of affordability. In a stadium that has 40 plus thousand seats, 80 games besides opening day, that's a lot of inventory. And so if you're smart and you have good data and analytics, you should be in a position to meet the customer at the level that they can afford to be there. Because again, it's about access to the game. So affordability is a part of access. And you're right, NFL tickets are much, much higher than a game day experience for a baseball team. And that's your opportunity, giving people access, and they see it, they feel it, they have it, they walk away with a good experience. And that leads to the sort of loyalty in the community, buying other Oriole themed products, going to Oriole baseball themed events. That's the strategy that you have. So it's a little bit like the car business, which is I'm going to promote the Camrys and the Corollas and the things that are affordable, dependable, and you know that there isn't really much of a question of, hey, if I buy that vehicle, not only do I have to think about the cost of acquisition, but it's the cost of maintaining it. And baseball should and can be a low maintenance price for any community. And again, Maryland has a lot of baseball. You have Frederick, you have Bowie, you have Aberdeen. There's a lot of baseball.
Hagerstown now, I see that in
Hagerstown,
the commercials. Yeah.
right, in and around. And so your relative footprint to attract people, if they're already predisposed to baseball in Frederick or Aberdeen, now the opportunity is just getting to Baltimore City for a game, for a weekend. And then on top of that, in this area, you have the natural rivalries of the Yankees and Red Sox. There are a lot of fans here in this area. And then when the Dodgers or Cubs or some other national team, Manny Machado from the Padres coming in, those should be opportunities to build on top of that. In addition to the base that you have, you add those marginal fans.
I think the last time I had you on, I had just seen the sexy ad. Maybe it was, nah, maybe not. It was the beginning of baseball season, with April. The
Hmm.
Ravens ran some sexy ads about the greatest team and the greatest fan experience, or the great tickets available. And I thought that's almost makes me want to vomit. If David Modell were alive and it's disgraceful. This is as good as it gets for the Ravens, right? Like it's literally as good as it gets. They could not be in a better position to win. And now the Orioles have come back from the depths of where you left them 30 years ago to be relevant enough, and I could hold my wallet up if I had it here, relevant enough to get my Visa card. And I got to figure out where, in addition to food, rent, all the things, travel, kids, ball, well, all the things we do, how much do I have for them? And when they come directly to me, as they have for season tickets or the direct TV package. But to your point, most people our age, Marty, are used to getting this shit for free. And to your point, like it just kind of came. The games were just here. Now, when you send me an individual bill for anything, Food Network, anything, I don't want to pay for any of that as the iceberg has melted, as you pointed out earlier. How many people are going to check the box on their credit card and just turn their credit card over to Mr. Rubenstein? And football's monitoring all of this, but football's just swimming in money. I had Maury Brown say to me this week, once the Packers numbers came out, he's like, it's idiot proof running an
Hmm.
NFL team. And I thought,
Yeah.
oh, maybe that explains the whole thing. You know what I mean? Like as to how they behave, because football has figured this out where we're all into it and they don't feel like they're hitting us over the head for much of anything financially. Even when we buy a jersey for twice as much as it's worth or whatever, the football, the access point for football feels like, oh, we're all included. I don't have to pay for anything. It's just
Hmm.
there.
Yeah, no, football, the NFL's done a fabulous job since the early 60s of moving their model to national media revenues. And as you probably heard from Maury or others, they're getting checks in the plus $400 million range each year, and that continues to grow. And it would be next to impossible to operate your NFL franchise at a loss, knowing that you're getting 400 plus million when your payroll salary cap is, in the mid 100 million. Look, NFL teams are still expensive to operate, but that ability to know guaranteed over the next 10 years what my top line number one revenue stream coming in is going to be. Baseball is somewhat different. They rely upon more regional and local revenue streams. They do get national revenues, but not to the percentage of the National Football League. And so they figure that out, which puts more emphasis on the local franchises and franchise in Baltimore and Washington in particular to do that kind of day-to-day marketing, to be the Walmart of the sports industry, which is to be affordable, great price, good service, all those different things that go with it, because they need to supplement those national revenues and make up for the gap that exists between the NFL and Major League Baseball. So, having said all that, like I said, the window continues to open up here, and the future here has to be such where what's the ballpark development going to be? What's the prospect of giving an all-star game? What's the opportunity for postseason baseball and how that drives people paying for and buying tickets along the way?
Well, at least we're not selling subscriptions to Marlins television or Rays
There you go.
television or the
Right.
Sacramento Athlete. I mean, at least they have a product here. Katie Griggs and Mr. Rubenstein and the Whistler, they have this thing now. People like you and me are watching, saying, "What are you going to do with it?" And
Mm-hmm.
including the roster itself this week and how that relates to payroll and players down the line. Marty Conway is the good professor of all things sports business at Georgetown University. He is our defending champion. You can usually follow him out on LinkedIn or places where smart people think smart things. Marty, ball game soon, beverage
Yeah.
soon,
Yeah.
concert soon, something soon. It's always good to have you on, brother.
Great. Thanks for the invite, and hopefully see you down the road
All
here
right.
soon
Hopefully, I'm a
locally.
better student than those kids you're inheriting over at
Yeah.
Georgetown. I am Nestor. We are WNST AM 1570 Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore positive.